Hello everybody, welcome back, and we are going to be reviewing section 26 for the Bcec 2021 update. Let's make our way through. Let's go and have a look at, so here we have the electrical code, and let me just refresh this a little bit here. Table of contents. There we go. Section 26. And we only want single page. Single page. So that we can work with this. All right. Section 24. There have been a few changes, so let's just go to the slide presentation and start. One of the changes that was made, just looking at this page here right now, that I can note is that there was a deletion. The old 26008 rule has been removed. This rule here is not the same rule that was here before. So let's go to the presentation and let's just have a look at that. And presentations here. So section 26. Section 26 is the installation of electrical equipment. It's probably one of the most used sections of our code. It's definitely a general section. When you go through section 26, you have multiple different aspects of the industry. It's the installation of electrical equipment. There's panels, there's branch circuits. There's some sections that have been removed. We have transformers, we have capacitors. And we'll take a look at a few other things, but primarily we're going to be looking at the changes right up front. So as I noted just a moment ago, 26008 sprinklered equipment. This is a rule from 2018 where electrical equipment vaults or electrical equipment rooms are sprinklered. The electrical equipment contained in such rooms or vaults shall be protected where needed by non-combustible hoods or shields arranged to minimize interference with the sprinklered equipment. This rule and the appendix rule has now been removed. And the appendix B note has been removed as well. Also, removed from section 26 is storage batteries. So 26500 to 514 has been removed, but it has not been removed from the code. It has been moved to section 64, renewable energies. So 64800 now is storage batteries. And when we get into section 64, we will touch on that. Added for clarity, conductor size for transformers, where the transformer overcurrent protection is more than 125% of the rated primary or secondary current in accordance with 26500 1 or 2 and 26543. The primary and secondary conductors connected to the transformer shall be protected in accordance with 14100 or 14104. So one of the things to remember that overcurrent and conductors for transformers are all based at 125%. So a conductor cannot be more than a conductor cannot be less than 125% of the primary current or secondary current. And an overcurrent device cannot be less it cannot be more than 125%. So conductor cannot be less than, overcurrent cannot be more. But there are situations where if it falls between specific sizes, it can go up. But if it does go up, if your overcurrent size moves up, let's just have a quick look at the rule. Whoa, that's not what I was trying to do. 26254. Oh, I've gone too far. So overcurrent protection for dry transformer circuits. So this is for dry only. Rated 750 volts or less. Subrule 1, except as permitted by Subrule 2, each ungrounded conductor of a transformer, feeder, or branch circuit supplying a transformer shall be provided with overcurrent protection rated or set at not more than 125% of the primary current of the transformer, and this primary overcurrent device shall be considered to be protecting the secondary conductors rated at 125% or more of the rated secondary current. Now, notwithstanding Subrule 1, a transformer having an overcurrent device on the secondary side set at not more than 125% of the rated current of the transformer shall not be required to have an individual overcurrent device on the primary side, provided the feeder overcurrent device is set at not more than 300% of the rated primary current of the transformer. The rule that we're looking for clarity on is Subrule 3 here, where the value not exceeding 125% of the rated primary current of the transformer is specified in Subrule 1 does not correspond with a standard rating of an overcurrent device. The next higher standard rating shall be permitted. And you can find these standard ratings. These standard ratings, if we actually go over to table, there we go. Table 13. If it falls in between something, so if it falls between the rating or the ampacity of the conductor, 111 to 125 amps can go on a 125 amp breaker, and so on and so forth. But where the rule gets specific is when you have to increase the overcurrent size, you must make sure the conductor is okay for it. So what you do to one, you must do to the other. Stop. There we go. So that's that rule right there. So, all right, now let's go back to the presentation. So 256, so that's conductor sizes of transformers. Now, panel boards and dwelling units. So this has been revised to a panel board shall be installed in every dwelling unit except for dwelling units in hotels and motels, and dwelling units that have been created by subdivision of a single dwelling that are not individually metered for electrical power consumption. A little bit more straightforward. This rule here, so Subrule B applies to a dwelling unit that has been created by subdivision. That is typical of a single-family dwelling with a secondary suite. It's subdivision of a single-family dwelling, but they're not individually metered. You can have them individually metered, but if they're not individually metered, they do not require one in each suite. That's the rule in the code book. Now, keep in mind, some authorities having jurisdiction will ask for that panel in that suite, we'll call it. New rule, as we talked about earlier, flood hazard zones. So, branch circuits below ground level in areas designated as flood hazard zones. Where branch circuits are located below ground level in areas designated as flood hazard zones, ground fault protection shall be provided to de-energize all normally ungrounded conductors with a ground fault setting sufficient to allow normal operation of connected loads under normal conditions. In the Appendix B note, flood hazard zones are designated by local floodplain management regulations or local bylaws. So if you had a basement that was below the flood, that was in actually a flood hazard zone, all those branch circuits into the basement may have to be ground fault protected. This is actually an interesting rule, and this is a good change. So it eliminates a lot of confusion. So new is B and C, branch circuits and dwelling units. And I'm going to go right to B, where an additional dwelling unit is created by subdivision of a dwelling unit. The smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms installed in the additional dwelling unit shall be permitted to be connected to a branch circuit installed in the original dwelling unit, as required by 32-200, provided that branch circuits for dwelling units shall meet the following requirements. 1. The panel board supplying the branch circuit is labeled in a conspicuous, legible, and permanent manner to indicate that it supplies smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms in the additional dwelling unit. And the panel board in the additional dwelling unit is labeled in a conspicuous, legible, and permanent manner to indicate the branch circuit disconnecting means for the respective smoke alarm and carbon monoxide alarm circuit as in the original dwelling unit. So what this means is this branch circuit is part of 2 dwelling units. So it must come from the main dwelling unit and it must be labeled as such. And then the panel board in the, I'm going to say suite, must be labeled that the smoke alarms are labeled in the main part of the house. And then C is very simple. Notwithstanding item A, where a single panel board is installed as permitted by 26.602.1, branch circuits from that panel board shall be permitted to supply outlets or electrical equipment in the dwelling units created by the subdivision of the single dwelling. So if it's a single panel board, you still must label it, but it is only one panel board. (26.700) is a new rule, and it's an interesting rule. It's basically just covering off more of what ifs, and I guess certain scenarios have come up where there is area behind a sink that does require a receptacle or could have a receptacle. So receptacles having a CSA configuration of 515R or 520R installed within 1.5 meters of sinks shall not be located A, on the area of the counter directly in front of the sink, and B, on the area of the wall directly behind the sink, except where the distance between the wall and the inside edge of the sink exceeds 450 millimeters. I'll throw in a photo in here just to, as a good example of where this may actually fall into place. So here's an example of a corner kitchen, and the sink is actually in the corner. And so this is actually a bigger cabinet here, and you could have a space here where you may have a receptacle. Somebody may decide to put something back there. So you can end up with a receptacle back there. And so 8B, on the area of the wall directly behind a sink, except where the distance of the wall and the inside edge of the sink exceeds 1400 millimeters. So you would have to, this space here would not be less than 450 millimeters. So this would have to be, that's a significant distance between here and here. And then just a further clarification of the term sink is intended to include sinks, bar sinks, laundry sinks, utility room sinks, wash basins, etc. that are connected to a plumbing drain pipe that is not intended to include portable wash basins. So And it is not intended that 1.5 dimension be extended through wall openings that is fitted with a door. Where the room combines a wash basin or shower in the area serving another purpose, such as an ensuite bathroom or bedroom. In a bedroom, requirements for the receptacles located in such rooms or areas shall be considered similar to the requirements of the receptacles located in the bathrooms or washrooms. It is also intended that no receptacle be located directly behind the sink unless the distance between the wall and the inside edge of the sink exceeds 450 millimeters. They've actually improved. This is a greater clarification. So new 26704. Protection of receptacles by ground fault circuit interrupter of a Class A type. So I just want to go to the code book and let's just look this up. So now it has its own rule, its own designation, protection of receptacles. And if we actually look at the section here, this is receptacles. So it is a general statement. And 704, this statement here, all receptacles having a 515R and 520R installed outdoors and within 2.5 meters of finished grade shall be protected with a ground fault circuit interrupter of a Class A type. So this actually is a great rule because it actually eliminates a lot of confusion. And so the broad statement, and this broad statement can paint many pictures, and it can also help in a lot of ways because the rules before used to say an outside receptacle on a dwelling unit, and it never actually stated a size, required it to be ground fault protected. So if you put in a receptacle for a car charger outdoors, you had to have a ground fault protection. But this rule here has eliminated the requirement for that, and this is actually a great rule. So tuck this one in your hat. All receptacles having a CSA configuration of a 515R and 520R installed outdoors and within 2.5 meters of finished grade shall be protected with a ground fault circuit interrupter of a Class A type. The other rules talk about sinks and wash basins, but this rule here is got great clarity now. So it doesn't matter if it's a commercial building, it doesn't matter if it's a residential dwelling, it really does not matter. There was always gray area around a commercial building. Now it is just a 515R or a 520R. If it's outdoors below 2.5 meters, ground fault protected. And then Appendix B note. For receptacles intended for vehicle heaters installed in accordance with 8400, it should be noted that CSA 22.2 number 191 permits specific heaters to be sheath heating elements to leak 4 milliamps of current for the first 10 minutes after power is applied. If 2 or more heaters are protected on the same AFCA or Class A GFCI device, the cumulative leakage current at power may result in tripping. Tripping the GFCI device can also be an indication that replacement or maintenance is required. So they're just acknowledging that it could trip. New, and this goes back to the flood hazard zone. So if a sump pump is for a building in a flood hazard zone, the receptacles must be located above the flood elevation or marked for suitable for submersion. And more on the flood hazard zones. Sump pump receptacle. Uh, 26712B, it is intended by this requirement that the sump pump receptacle located below the flood level elevation should only be designed and constructions that will allow the receptacle to safely and reliably operate if submersed in water. And that's it for section 28. Or 26, sorry. We will touch on section 28. I'm just going to pause for a brief bit, and then we'll come back for section 28. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me.